You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. the live stream. Detroit is different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. I am Khary Frazier here in the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And if you don't know Public Comment is the show where we talk a whole lot about municipal politics of the city of Detroit, really based on Malachi Barrett's notebook. Malachi works for Bridge Detroit, and I'm about to introduce him. But before I even get to that, make sure you go to Bridge Detroit and you sign up for the notebook so you can get more in-depth information actually than we always cover here. It's a couple other times it comes out throughout the week, and thank you for tuning in to this your Thursday morning. Malachi, how you doing?
Good. Good to be back here in the studio with a lot of different items to talk about. The council gets going. We're just about to enter budget season. So probably going to dominate a lot of what we're talking about in the next couple of weeks. But I think the main topic today is something that has been also floating around for quite a while, and that's the Leland House and what's going to happen to those tenants who were evicted at the end of December.
Yeah, definitely. This Leland House, as we know, it kind of hits the mix of a lot of different discussions that have already been prevalent throughout the city of Detroit, like leading up, starting with like what rights do tenants actually have, and the start of what goes with the Tenants' Rights Commission. And now let's get over to a little bit of this information of what's happening with the Leland House. All right, so right now, Leland House tenants fight for the dignity. Federal bankruptcy judge approved to plan and restore temporary power to the Leland House. Tenants will retrieve personal belongings left after December 10th. 2025 evacuation. 21 of the 31 residents submitted inventory lists. And also, even in the story that you had about this, remembering that like some tenants have lost employment connected to this. A lot of the hotels are kind of out of Detroit proper. And Leland House, as far as I'm concerned, that's a property that's downtown Detroit. So if you've been staying in a hotel, in Troy or Livonia or further out, even Southfield, that could definitely take you out of the scope of where you've been staying. This has been a situation that has definitely boiled over. So you all can kind of get what's happening. The building was had a permanent eviction because it was unsafe for people to be there. At that point in time, this past council meeting, you even uplifted that a lot of residents were told, okay, you probably will be able to get back in a week. I can't imagine, let alone, I mean, you know, what's happening in your refrigerator, or you know what I'm saying, if you left something like on the counter or a table, you know, it has to be like a very tough situation. You definitely want to keep a lot of the residents safe itself, but during this whole time, the owners of the building filed for bankruptcy and they're looking for new ownership. People are uplifting this should be affordable housing, all while a lot of tenants are like, I just want to go back there to get my belongings. Malachi, what has been happening? Because this has actually been a topic really since it seems like the start of the year, as it should be, because I can't even imagine how the tenants are feeling about this.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked before, this is a really dramatic example of something that happens a lot in the city where you have a rental unit, a housing unit that gets into disrepair either by neglect or issues pile up. Landlords are either unable or unwilling to keep it habitable. We get to a point where the city's inspectors, through our code enforcement mechanisms, try to fine, punish, coax the owners into doing something about this, and then we get to a point where people have to leave because the building is uninhabitable. I think the Leland House has brought up a lot of various housing issues that are really prescient for kind of what we're talking about right now. When it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to the number of properties that are out of compliance with the city's rental, when it comes to just the state of housing that is, it's allowed to have people in it, but it's not necessarily safe. There's been a conversation among council members about getting the health department more involved so that there's more of these kinds of mold and other health issues that are being addressed, even if the building is not deemed uninhabitable. It may not be healthy.
there's conversations now happening about co-op structures and tenant ownership of buildings, maybe the city getting more involved in rehabilitating larger apartment buildings like this. What we've been hearing as well from tenants is just a repeated call for them to get access to the building to recover their personal property. I was looking through some of the court records, and they were told, according to the tenants union, that they would be able to access the building the night that they were evicted. And so a lot of people didn't make that effort
plans,
to get everything you need, to clear the refrigerator like you're talking about. And so that's been really difficult for folks for basically 2 months now to not have access to a lot of things. So that's been really the call at the city council to have a city intervene so that people can access the building. That's been somewhat complicated by the fact that a transformer blew, and so there's no power, so the elevator doesn't work. And so the city's trying to decide now, what is it going to take to actually turn the power back on, right? And what would it cost if the power isn't restored to do this whole, recovery effort? But the key kind of turn of the screw that we saw on Tuesday, and this actually happened while the council was in session, there was a hearing between the ownership, the Leland House Limited Partnership, which is trying to sell the building. This is all in bankruptcy proceedings leading toward an auction of the building. There was a hearing between them, the city, the tenants unions, and other interested parties about, getting this plan together for people to be able to access the building, get their stuff back. And apparently, according to Conrad Mallett, the judge accepted the city's plan to basically take control of that effort, to take the lead on that effort, to pay for the restoration of the power, to come up with a process to recover items, to pay for storage for people that don't have an immediate place to put their stuff, and work with people to do that, either go along with tenants or accept a list of items from the tenant that they want taken out of their former apartment and collected. So there's going to be another week basically of kind of hammering out how exactly that will happen. And then we're told that basically early March, there will be, that actually recovery effort. So that was a pretty big step forward, according to Conrad Mallett. Council member said that, it took quite a bit of pushing to get to that point. And there's still a ton of unanswered questions about, what's kind of next, not only for the tenants, some of who have found housing, but also the building. I was going to say almost more importantly, but probably not more importantly than, people getting their housing. But the building itself, what's going to happen there is a huge question. Public commenters raised the point that I thought was a pretty good argument, actually, that, for whatever financial risk there might be of rehabilitating this, if the city were to take control, the next owner is probably going to ask for some kind of tax breaks to do it. So there's going to be a level of public investment in, restoring this building, probably one way or another. I think that's a pretty safe bet. So does the city want to take this on, or do they want to put it in the hands of another landlord who, could we trust them? Could we not? We kind of put ourselves in a position where down the line, a similar situation could happen. I think that's why the conversation around co-op structure is really interesting, but that's early. I don't have a lot of details on that yet, but council members are talking about that as a potential alternative. So this is, it's been a big story. It's not going away anytime soon. People have a little bit of clarity and hopefully, feel better about being on a path to recover their property. But we're still not there yet. So yeah, that was kind of the main.
Yeah. And I mean, even with it, like I say, no power or refrigerator, I can't even imagine even the smell of what that would be like. You know what I'm saying? Even as cold as it's been, it's still been warm enough. And we all definitely know that, as I sometimes call them, that you're leaving food out and scents like that can attract some cousins that you don't want visiting you. So that's going to be present. And then also clothing, you know what I'm saying? So, you probably are thinking to yourself, let me just grab a coat and, one or two items. But, these, the residents, I'm sure, have had to buy other clothing And that may not have been an expense that you plan on budgeting, especially like around the Christmas season. Definitely the consideration of what they've dealt with. I can't even imagine a lot of what could be present. District 5, Renata Miller has been very vocal about like what should be fair in reference to this and standing with a lot of those residents. So that's definitely applauded, and really all the council has definitely been looking to progress and see what would be the best solution for this. But as you talk about in the article, and it's just a very known fact that for so many years Detroit has been such a home ownership based city that a lot of the considerations, ordinances, laws, and rules in reference to rental properties are not at the level of many other cities that have like this 50% renters and tenants. As more of that is advancing in this time, it's certainly left many residents feeling as though they're on the, as they say, they're on the wrong side of anything that goes on between the property owner versus the person that's renting in the tenant itself. And even exploring, I urge you all to go back. Even it's from a lens of talking about what an executive could do, kind of in somewhat a council, but an excellent show of Detroit Next. That partnership between BridgeDetroit and Detroit is different. It's a whole episode talking about development and what that looks like in some of the lens of how developers see things, with Richard Hosey, Sonia Mays, and also Chase Cantrell, and some of the different points of access of what could be done as you do implement these rules. Where does it get best to maneuver and make connections in reference to this? Another big discussion definitely comes into like the ethics board. This was an interesting one as far as like hiring independent counsel. Independent counsel has been something that, back to like when people can access this, especially connected to what's happening in government. And right now, a lot of the ethics board is saying, okay, we can use the same legal department attorneys that already work with the city, which clearly you could see that could be that could possibly be compromised, because how hard are you going to investigate the possibility of somebody that is directly connected to the checks that you get? You know what I'm saying? And also, like, this kind of goes into like things that we've dealt with emergency management, and independent counsel. Another one of those quotes from Renata Miller is something that not just is logical, it will only help, especially when we think about like the ethics board and how that moves forward. Similar to the Leland situation, it's still about capacity and what we have budgeted for. And you uplift that budget season is basically right here, because March is right there. But if money's not necessarily there, and there definitely are pockets and pools of money that are not always utilized, but what's the take on this? What has been the response? I definitely know where you shared what Councilmember Miller shared about this, but what was the tone in reference to this?
Yeah, so just to make sure people understand the importance of this, actually kind of came in play in a recent, well, it's been probably a year or two now, so maybe not that recent at all. There was an investigation into a former planning director, and he was represented by a law department attorney who basically argued on his behalf in a hearing, and the board of ethics was getting its legal advice from a member of the law department as well. And the advice was, there was a debate around whether this official could even be held accountable under the board if he actually broke the rules, according to the art. So I think that is kind of one example of how the board has already experienced something like this. When you have legal representation from the same department, argue on both sides, I think you can kind of see the clear concerns about, whether there's influence from the administration or even just the potential. I mean, I think a lot of these ethics rules and the way these things are set up, we accept in good faith that our public officials are going to do the right thing, but the rules are in place to make sure that when a bad actor comes in place, they are barred from from
Yeah.
doing bad things. So I think it's more about eliminating the possibility of this potential for influence and corruption. And that certainly is where the board is saying that it's basically a prerequisite for them to have any kind of independence and true oversight if they take legal advice from essentially a member of the mayor's administration, especially when they are investigating members of the administration from time to time. This has been a conversation for quite a while now. The board has asked in prior budget years for some funding. I tried to pull it up really quick, but I don't have the exact number in front of me of what they would need for this. Suffice to say, a small portion of the overall city budget to hire an attorney or two to do this work. The council has been unable to get the administrations of the Duggan administration in the past to fund that. I'm not sure where the Sheffield administration sits on this, although I believe Sheffield has been somewhat of an ally of the Board of Ethics in terms of proportional funding was something that she pushed forward, which gave more funding to the board and the oversight agencies. And she's talked about how her experience with ethical reviews has kind of opened her eyes to the kind of limited power that the board has and how they need to be strengthened to really hold officials accountable. And to your point, Khary, like a lot of this is in the shadow of we know what it's like in the city where corruption is able to take place and how damaging that can be for the public. And so we will see kind of where this goes. There were legal memos that the law department, funny enough, and the legislative policy division that explored whether the board of ethics could have independent counsel. And the kind of irony of this whole situation is that memo has been made confidential. So the executive director was at council on Tuesday asking them to basically make that public, to waive the privilege on that confidential memo so that not only the public, but members of the board itself could see what advice the law department gave about whether the board can have law department legal representation. And she was pretty forceful, I think, in that, saying that this document has basically been suppressed, and it's an example of the, in her words, extreme length the board is being prevented from being fully informed about the issues they're meant to rule on. So Councilmember Miller, I grabbed her after the meeting because she's a member of the internal operations committee that deals with a lot of these legal issues. She said she's unsure if she's going to make the memos public, but she is supportive of the board having independent legal counsel. And I will just note that the council waiving privilege and publicizing a confidential memo has happened before. In fact, it's happened twice already this year. There were 2 memos that have had that happen. So not a crazy thing for the council to waive privilege on memos and release those. We'll have to see if there's anything different about this situation.
I definitely that has happened, and as you all see, like the challenge really when we get to this is it's the conflict of interest. If I'm basically if I'm going to support, whether it be the residents or someone employed by the city in a legal matter against the city, and the I guess the attorney that I'm going to be facing is a cubicle away. You know what I'm saying? It's it could cause challenges. Is back to, you want to make sure that everything kind of continues to swim and it floats well, and this could easily kind of end up being in troubled waters, as some of the elders sometimes say. So that's definitely something to pay attention to. And in that same arc, Michael Kelly, some property around City Airport in this expansion for a runway. This has been something that has been a discussion for decades almost, as far as will City Airport expand. City Airport is within the city of Detroit. I remember during my time as a child years ago, you definitely still had commercial flights right out of City Airport, especially Northwest. That's how old I am. Northwest, which is was, I guess, part of the conglomerate of Delta now, had a terminal there. And the big question about this is the original monies offered to Mr. Kelly was about like $79,000. Then a counter offer came for, let's say, like $250,000, and now you're very close to $500,000 as far as for what the property will be sold for and what that settlement is. No residents actually live there, but it definitely raises into question, like, when we look at what happened with the people that were actually living in communities where these solar farms that will provide energy for municipal buildings they're given much more consideration. And it kind of goes a little bit back to representation. I'm sure Mr. Kelly has legal teams that a lot of residents in Detroit don't necessarily have access to. So the amount of money that is being that will happen for this transaction definitely is I don't want to say shocking, but it definitely it raises some eyebrows, especially when we start with where the number was in the beginning, which also to me kind of like needs to be reassessed too, because if we're looking at 80,000 and it can get up to about 450,000, what's the who's coming up with those numbers as far as what the value is? And I've long been a person connected to like seeing a lot of stuff in real estate, knowing that who's appraising the value of these properties in Detroit and what it's worth. It can be a moving target as well. Malachi, what was the vote on this? How do people respond?
Yeah, it was I believe it was a unanimous decision. The idea here was we're going to avoid a jury trial, which could decide the land is worth even more money, and that would put the city at risk. Of course, the jury could also have decided that
it's worth less.
So it's always a gamble with these legal settlements. The city council generally takes the advice of the law department and approves them, in probably 99.9% of cases. It was interesting. There wasn't much discussion at the table on this. But Councilmember Benson brought the law department forward and the airport director to answer some questions. In his words, it was kind of in the spirit of transparency, basically to say the important thing I think maybe to realize here is like 95% of the money that is going to Michael Kelly is actually coming from the Federal Aviation Administration, because the FAA is requiring Detroit to expand its runway, which means it's basically requiring Detroit to acquire all of this extra property along the French Road, mini take as they call it. So we're only paying, 5% of this overall settlement. I guess the takeaway for me is like these kind of property speculators keep winning. This, Michael Kelly apparently bought a lot of these properties for under $500 and has made close to $500,000 off of them in just a couple of years. And we've, seen that happen kind of time and time again. Mr. Kelly has been sued by the city on many occasions for basically abandoning properties, some of which are rental properties, I should note as well. He was called a slumlord in some lawsuits. So everything we're kind of talking about today between housing, the law department, and these property owners is all kind of coming full circle here. Also, there were not any occupied structures in this. I believe there were some properties, some buildings, but most of it was vacant land, and then even the buildings themselves were unoccupied. So it is interesting to juxtapose. I mean, a lot of this stuff, the value of the land is kind of subjective. Is it, more valuable because it's next to the airport and the city really needs it? I don't know. I mean, the initial offer was $70-something thousand. The second offer was $22-something thousand. The final offer was $444,000. So you can kind of see the difference between what the city had initially
offered,
assessed the value and offered versus what Mr. Kelly ended up getting. I don't have a lot of insight into the details of the case, so it's hard to kind of say how those estimates were made. But, from an outside perspective, it kind of seems like if you're able to hold out and threaten the city with a lawsuit or a jury trial, maybe that can work in your favor.
I definitely think that this so first, city airport expanding and the opportunity to possibly bring any form of commercial flights at city airport, I think would be advantageous in many ways, even if it's like I mean, so often I think the the Detroit to Chicago flight from City Airport was something that many people could definitely have, and just connect to those cities. As Metro Airport has definitely been where we all are flying from, usually from the city of Detroit. But Lord knows, Metro Airport, it's all the businesses and other things that just naturally come to life when you have an active airport. The thought process of what that could be, I think, will be advantageous for the city, especially its proximity to downtown. So that's one thing. But the other thing, as far as like what the how the prices are determined and the value of the pitch, like you say, from about 80,000 to 220 to 450. Those are some giant steps, especially where I'm sure he bought properties closer to probably much less than even what the original offer was. And these relationships it's been uplifted of a lot of the property owners that do have tenants, and those relationships, as you say, full circle, even to this whole Leland situation, and where these where property owners stand versus like where a tenant can stand are completely different. Now, as much as I'm uplifting that from the city of Detroit, this is also a state of Michigan thing, and this is the United States of America thing. Ownership is very key, and I would share to most people, if you're walking into any legal proceedings and you're the person that owns what we're in reference to, especially like if you're taking the lead on the lawsuit, you're going to be given a lot of advantages versus a person that is that's using a facility, renting the facility, or living there, in the lens of what could be had. When it comes to this stuff, like so many of these plots of land that are now vacant, and what you have to how do you determine what the value of a lot of that stuff is? Those are deeper questions. I'm sure these discussions will come back up here in public comment. So, like usual, every Thursday, 8 a.m. here in public comment. Definitely always welcome to see you guys and come back. As you know, Malachi is giving that perspective. And as right now, I mean, more Detroit City Council hours, I think, than anybody probably running right now. I mean, we almost need to, that's one thing I may look back at. It's like how many hours, and we need to get like a ticker. And it's like,
I don't think I want to know that. That's like how much of my mortality have I given toward
I know, like the ticker just keeps going.
Yeah,
going and
that
going.
Ticker goes up and my life ticker goes down at the
Hilarious.
same time. No,
It's like Cal Ripken.
We got a lot coming though. Budget hearings are coming up. We actually have a meeting tonight with our partners at Outlier and the Detroit Documenters, talking about how we're going to get our hands wrapped around this. But yeah, the council notebook, the Detroit City notebook, as it's called now, comes out twice a week on Monday and Wednesday. So subscribe to that for free. I'm always finding lots of interesting stuff to put in that through either interviews that I'm doing and information I'm gathering from these public meetings, as well as aggregating some things that I think are interesting. Last time we talked about some lawsuits that the Department of Justice, or an investigation, I should say, that they launched into the public school district here in Detroit around some sex and gender identity issues that are very present for the Trump administration right now. And what I try to do is bring some more context to that. So if you go into our Monday edition of the notebook, you can actually read, the letter that was sent to Dr. Vitti. You can read some of the Title IX discussion. You can get some more kind of context on what exactly that means. Good mix of local information that hopefully you find useful, always available for free at BridgeDetroit.com.
Definitely. With that being said, we'll see you next Thursday. Peace. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different in Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.